The tribe of Benjamin. The tribe of Benjamin are modern countries of Angola, Madagascar, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, São Tome and Principe, Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo, coastline regions of South Africa and Mozambique. Jacob said, "Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, in the evening he divides the plunder." Genesis 49:27. Benjamin was the last born of the family and nothing much was said about him. As we have seen with most last-born, they do not contribute much to the family and typically obey the directives of the senior members of the family. Jacob described Benjamin as a ravenous wolf. What does this mean? Ravenous is defined as extreme hunger or extreme needy. What are the attributes of the wolf? Wolves are described as complex, highly intelligent animals who are caring, playful, and above all devoted to family and are always hungry. This is the pattern of behavior of a typical last-born, whether male or female. Last-born rely heavily on their elders. They are never satisfied with what they have and continually return for more. This does not make them terrible people, but it does show that they depend on their elders for leadership, protection, and welfare. However, Judah and the Levites completely failed them when it mattered most. The Benjamins, along the Levites and Judah, rejected Jesus when they chose Barabbas over him. This rendered the Jews partially responsible for the death of Jesus. The Benjamins were equally guilty as the Levites and Judah, and they were punished accordingly. Benjamin didn't say much about himself to his descendants. He only explained his role in the kidnapping and selling of his brother, Joseph, to slave merchants. In 1400 AD, a published nautical magazine reported that some Jews were expelled from Portugal and transported to the coast of southern Guinea. Nautical magazine reported the following news, that in the reign of King Don John II, and close to the 15th century, large numbers of Jews were expelled from Portugal and taken to the coast of southern Guinea, that the island of St. Thomas, which is not more than 100 miles from the mainland, was populated by mulattoes descended from the Jewish exiles and Anglo women. It is possible the Jewish character noticed at the Gabon and Congo may have originated from this source. Congo and Angola or Dango people. There have been so many of the Congos and Angolos brought to this country, island of St. Thomas, in former years, while still greater numbers have been imported into Brazil of late. Sources: Nautical magazine of 1400 AD. The Jews fled through the Mediterranean Sea and settled in West Africa. Unlike the tribes of Levi and Judah, whose destiny were intertwined and escaped to the same location. Some Jews fled from Israel to Portugal and later spread to parts of Spain before they were deported to Africa after some years. Why did the Jews of Benjamin escape to Portugal? It's important to remember that the Jews were under heavy attack and the Roman soldiers who are known for their brutality would not spare the Jews as the Caesar commanded. While running for their lives, the nearest place to escape to was Portugal. As we can see from the map that Israel is not far from Portugal. Wikipedia history recorded that, in 1492, Spain expelled its Jewish population as part of the Spanish Inquisition. Tens of thousands of Spanish Jews subsequently fled to Portugal, where King John II granted them asylum in return for payment. However, the asylum was only temporary. After 8 months, the Portuguese government decreed the enslavement of all Jews who had not yet left the country. The history also recorded that, in 1493, King John deported several hundred Jewish children to the newly discovered colony of São Tome, where many of them perished. Most Jews who had spread from Portugal and settled in Spain were eventually deported back to Portugal due to the Spanish Inquisition. What was the Spanish Inquisition? I will address this later. King John II of Portugal, who had promised the Jews asylum for a fee, but changed his decision and refused to grant them asylum. In 1493, the king enslaved Jews who had not yet left the country, but he later deported several hundred Jewish children to São Tome and Principe. Wikipedia history stated that, following John's death in 1494, the new King Manuel I of Portugal restored the freedom of the Jews. However, in 1497, under the pressure of Spain through the marriage of Isabella, Princess of Asturias, the Church, and some Christians among the Portuguese people, King Manuel I of Portugal decreed that all Jews had to convert to Christianity or leave the country without their children. Hard times followed for the Portuguese Jews, with the massacre of 2,000 individuals in Lisbon in 1506, further forced deportations to São Tomé, where there is still a Jewish presence today, and the later and even more relevant establishment of the Portuguese Inquisition in 1536. Following the death of King John II, King Manuel I succeeded as King of Portugal. King Manuel I restored the freedom of Jews imprisoned in Lisbon by the previous king. Due to pressure from the Roman Catholic Church, King Manuel I issued a decree forcing all Jews to convert to Christianity or leave the country without their children. But the Jews refused to exchange their traditions for Christianity. King Manuel ordered the execution of almost 2,000 Jews because they refused to accept Christianity and relinquish the Jewish traditions. Thousands of Jews were deported from Portugal to São Tome and Principe. What was the Spanish Inquisition? The word Inquisition itself tells us the meaning. The Catholic Inquisition was a powerful office set up within the Roman Catholic Church to root out and punish heresy throughout the whole world. The Catholic Inquisition was established in France in the 12th century to punish religious opposition. The Catholic Inquisition arrived in Portugal and Spain in the 15th century and tried to force the Jews to abandon their Judaism custom, but they refused. Nautical magazine stated that King Manuel I of Portugal exiled about 2,000 Jewish children under the age of 10 to São Tomé and Principe around 1500. Most of them died. The magazine also stated that all Jews had to convert to Christianity or leave the country without their children. King Don John II began the expulsion of Jews from Portugal to the coast of Guinea, but after his death, his successor, King Manuel I, continued the deportation. Why would the Portuguese king deport nearly 2,000 Jewish children to São Tome and Principe after their parents were deported to the same region a few years before? Since the children were averaged of 10 years old or less, it would have been much easier to brainwash them into accepting Christianity rather than deporting them to meet their parents in Africa. The Nautical magazine explained why the Jewish children were exiled to São Tome and Principe. Nautical magazine stated that in the reign of King Don John II, and close to the 15th century, large numbers of Jews were expelled from Portugal and taken to the coast of Guinea, that the island of St. Thomas, which is not more than 100 miles from the mainland, was populated by mulattoes descended from the Jewish exiles and Anglo women. Mulatto is a term used to describe someone who was born to both black and white parents. In recent times, they have been referred to as half-castes. Many people find the term mulatto insulting, but it was a key piece of evidence in identifying the Jews in that region. The author wrote that the women to whom the Jewish men had married were Anglo, which is slang for white. This literally means that the Jewish men written about in the Nautical magazine were blacks, and the Portuguese were aware of this, which explains why the king expelled them to Africa. The brown or black-skinned people have dominant genes. If a black man and a Caucasian, white, woman have a child together, the child would most likely be 60 to 70% brown. The Nautical magazine stated that King Manuel I of Portugal exiled about 2,000 Jewish children under the age of 10 to São Tomé and Principe around 1500. Most died, but in the early 17th century, the local bishop noted with disgust that there were still Jewish observances on the island and returned to Portugal because of his frustration with them. Source: Wikipedia. The Nautical magazine stated that It is possible the Jewish character noticed at the Gabon and Laongo may have originated from this source. The Nautical Journal established that Jews in Gabon, and Laongo, now the Republic of Congo, descended from the same lineage of the Jews that were exiled from Portugal to the coast of Guinea. The Nautical magazine earlier recorded that, in the reign of King Don John II, and close to the 15th century, large numbers of Jews were expelled from Portugal and taken to the coast of Guinea, that the island of St. Thomas. Which countries are located on the coast of Guinea today? We see the map of Central Africa. The red circle are modern countries on the coast of Guinea, and they are Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo and Angola. Which country is located on the island of St. Thomas? The island of St. Thomas is an island or country known as São Tome and Principe, and it is located at the coast of Gulf of Guinea. São Tome and Principe are a Portuguese phrase for St. Thomas and Prince. Countries in these regions speak Portuguese as their lingua franca, a language they spoke for 600 years before they were deported to Africa.